My story starts with me as a totally clueless matric at a school just up the road from here called Crawford in 2000. So I graduated and someone said to me, and one of my friends said to me, you know, you should apply to Harvard. They've got great scholarships. You can go. It actually works out to be quite cheap. And so I'd never been to America. I didn't know anything about the place. I just had heard of Harvard, looked on a website, it looked great, and I applied. And I sort of stumbled into getting accepted. And a similar thing repeated when I went to Oxford after Harvard. I didn't know anything really about the place. I was totally intimidated. And you can imagine a guy like this matric thinking about the kind of people who've been to Harvard or Oxford. It was incredibly intimidating. These are people who seemed superhuman. They were, you know, I thought that there's no way that I can compete with people like this, or that South Africa can ever produce people like these. But I got there, and you know, as happens, you get a bit more confident and a bit more comfortable, and you start to realize, you know, these people, they're not really superhuman. In fact, they seem to be following quite a simple formula here. What they do, they take world-class human talent, they invest world-class resources in that talent, and almost inevitably they produce world-class leaders, world-class businessmen, world-class scientists. And so I became very interested in this idea of whether South Africa is using our human talent, our potential, as well and as efficiently as what America or the UK are using it, for example. And what I found is that in some communities we really are. In some communities South Africa produces incredible people, incredible leaders, incredible business people. But there's one community in South Africa where no one seems to be looking for talent. And that group of people consists of the poorest people in the country. And instead of talking about talent in this group, what we do, if you're not in that demographic, people define that demographic by its problems. We say, you know, it's a group with high unemployment, it's a group which has suffered from a poor education system, there's high rates of crime, high rates of infection with HIV/AIDS. All these problems. But there's 5 million people in this group in South Africa, 5 million people unemployed, and then another 5 million in minimum wage jobs. So it struck me as a really terrible idea for a country to say, oh, we've got 45 million people, let's just write off those 10 million. We'll make it happen with the rest. Those people will just talk about them in terms of a problem. That didn't seem to make sense. So maybe if you want to be cynical, if you want to make the argument, you could say those 10 million people are, you know, they had their chance, it was a fair system, and they blew it. They just weren't good enough, and that's why they're in the position they're in. But everyone knows in South Africa, everyone knows in South Africa, and everyone knows outside South Africa, that our country historically has been one of the least fair countries in the world. We've never had a fair system, and we still don't have a fair system, as hard as we're trying now to rectify what's happened in the past. So if I had been in a classroom like that, I'll just say personally, if I had been in a classroom like this, there's no way that I would be making a speech like this to you today. Instead, I think most likely I'd be considered one of the group who's considered a problem. And so logically it didn't make sense to me to think really at all that the distribution of talent in this group of people, these 10 million people, should be any different than in any group anywhere in the world. That you're going to have you're going to have people who are not that talented, you're going to have people who have average abilities, and then you're going to have people who are extremely talented, as good as anywhere else in the world. So logically that's what I thought. And if you live in Johannesburg or you live in South Africa, you know just from daily experience that we have talented people who are not using their talent optimally in this country. You see it in street vendors, you see it in guys on the side of the road trying to fix things for you. You see it everywhere. There's people who are talented, who are innovative, who could be doing much more than they're doing, but are being held back by the system that we have. And so I became convinced that we have, not just that we have talent in that group, but that we have world-class talent in that group. And I was particularly interested in entrepreneurship, because as much as it may be true that that group had a normal sort of standard distribution of talent, if you're talking about science or maybe engineering, the educational system does matter. You know, if you haven't had your 12 years of good education and an undergraduate and a postgraduate and good work experience, it's really difficult to become a world-class engineer. But entrepreneurship's not like that. Entrepreneurship is much more of a lived experience. Entrepreneurship is about leadership. It's about ideas. It's about hustling. And these are things that people are doing every day, whether they're in the townships or whether they're in the suburbs. It doesn't matter. And so I was convinced that there was world-class talent in this group, world-class entrepreneurial talent that needed to be identified and invested in. And I'm not talking about talent that when you say, so when I say world-class, I mean it. I'm not talking about people who you say, oh, you know, when you consider the background that that person comes from, they're doing very well. You know, they've done a great job. That's not helping anyone, that kind of feeling sorry for people. I'm talking about developing talent that can compete with anyone in the world. And so I came home from England with this idea, but wanting to find out what's going on in the market, because I was sure that I'm not the first person to think that there's talent in this group. And what I found is that there's incredible programs for entrepreneurs in South Africa. Government's invested, the private sector's invested. There are great things going on. The problem we have here is that almost every institution defines you as an entrepreneur if you've started a business. So you've started a business, we can help you. We'll give you mentorship, training, everything you need. But we don't have enough businesses in South Africa. We have one of the lowest rates of entrepreneurship of any middle income country in the world. So if you look at these numbers, early stage entrepreneurial activity are businesses that have been going for less than 3.5 years, and established businesses are businesses for more than 3.5 years they've been operating. South Africa has early stage activity of only 5.9%. In our peer group, which is countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South American countries, 11.2%. And the best performer is Colombia, with almost a quarter of their population involved in some kind of startup activity. Established business ownership rates are the same, 1.4%, 7.9% is our peer group average. I mean, 5.6 times what we're doing. And China at 12.3 times what South Africa is doing. So we just don't have enough entrepreneurs. So to limit our entrepreneurial development to people who've started a business basically excludes 93% of a population. And what these numbers show you is that whether you've started a business, it's not really anything to do with any kind of innate ability that you're born with. Entrepreneurship is a lot to do with circumstance. One of the best predictors of whether you become an entrepreneur, for example, is whether you have an entrepreneur in your family. So, you know, you get exposed to entrepreneurship through that person, and then you're more likely to start a business yourself. And our population, the large part of our population, was explicitly discouraged from starting businesses. People, through an actual explicit education system, were trained to be laborers and not to be business owners. So we just don't have the entrepreneurs to encourage that kind of knock-on effect that's required. And so what we wanted to create was a model that could identify brilliant entrepreneurs and invest in them without using the filter of whether you've started a business. And that's why we started the Awethu Project. And at Awethu, we said, we don't really care if people have started a business. We don't care if people have even an investable idea, because as TED shows, I think, ideas are limited by exposure. And the more you get exposed, the more you are likely to develop new ideas. And so a lot of people in this demographic we're talking about haven't had the kind of exposure that would encourage them to create sort of technology businesses or anything other than, say, if you've only seen a spaza shop, for example, if you've only seen a taxi business, why would you come up with that much of a variation on that business? I don't think any human being would. We also don't care if you finished high school. We also don't care because only 23% of South Africans finish high school. And we also don't care whether you have work experience. What we care about is that you're a young South African, that you've never had access to systematic opportunity, and most importantly, that you outperform everyone else, and we talk about theoretically the 1 in 1,000, outperform everyone else from your background on our tests of entrepreneurial potential. So we went to the literature. There's tons of literature on what makes a great entrepreneur. We had a lot of our own ideas, and we created tests to test for the characteristics that generally are found in successful entrepreneurs in the developing world. And it's important, I think, to say here that our model is a for-profit model. I think it would be almost maybe even a bit hypocritical to say we can develop entrepreneurs, but we'll do so from the safety of a not-for-profit. We partner with our entrepreneurs that we identify, and we are only successful if they are successful. We took our model, the first place we went on our talent identification process is a place called Alexandra Township. I'm sure all of you know it. It's about 3 kilometers from Sandton City. It sums up the the strange social dynamics we have in South Africa, that is one of the poorest places in the country, right next door to one of the richest places in the country. It faces all the problems that we know exist in this demographic. And so we went there, we handed out flyers, we put up posters, we used community representatives, we went on the radio. And I show this picture because this is one of our first days collecting application forms. We were there with handwritten signs and umbrellas from my mum, our beach umbrellas from home. But I show this because we're trying to help young entrepreneurs identify and train, but we're young entrepreneurs ourselves and we didn't have resources, and I'm quite proud of it, to be honest, because I think we've learned a lot, but we've also achieved quite a lot with very little money and with a lot of volunteerism and a lot of hard work over the last year. And over the course of about 6 weeks, we had 1,000 people apply, and using our tests, we filtered the best of those people. We put them through about 20 different measures of entrepreneurial potential. And at the end of those 6 weeks, we selected our first 3, what we call Awethu entrepreneurs. And this little clip I'm about to show is from an interview they did during the selection process.
I always felt like I was suffocating every time I had to go there, to force myself to get up, force myself to go to work, even if I didn't like the type of work that I was doing.
What were you doing?
Like the last job I did, I was actually working at the airport, the last job I did. And so...
doing what?
I was a baggage handler there. And so... yeah, because before that...
That's crazy, man. Baggage handler.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you were getting bored of that job.
I was very bored. But then the good part that came out of that job is that actually regained my interest in reading, because nowadays you have a lot of spare time. So actually...
the thing is that, like, to be quite honest with you, I'm a very bright person. Like, I'm a bright person, like, naturally. Like, I'm one of those kids, like, they were even getting promoted at schools. I used to child books get 90%. I once got 100% for my biology. I used to always get 100% for my maths. You know what I mean? So I used to be like super bright at school, and I got like some distinction.
Yeah. As soon as I left school, I wanted a job. I didn't do well in school. I just scraped through. I don't think I had the confidence in myself or I didn't believe in myself enough to work hard and excel. And now, over the past year especially, I mean, I've been getting distinctions in economics, getting high marks for the other subjects that I've been doing. And comparatively speaking, I've grown a lot. I am hungry for this. I believe I can do it. I believe with guidance I can do it. That's saying to get extraordinary results, to do extraordinary things, and I firmly believe in that.
So those were the 3 guys that we chose: Chris, Ayanda, and Mark. So Chris was selling beers from his place in Alex when he applied to Awethu. Ayanda was selling computers to local schools in Kwatema. He was buying them retail and selling them retail plus something. And Mark was unemployed. He was working in a call center before, and he was unemployed when he applied to Awethu. And we put them through, like I said, about 20 different tests of entrepreneurial potential. Everything from cognitive tests to work ethic assessments to business simulations, teamwork exercises, everything we could think of. And they're extraordinary. I mean, they're 3 out of 1,000. If you want to, again, be cynical, you could say, well, yeah, 3 out of 1,000, the best of a bad bunch, But the thing that I love to counter that argument with is the cognitive scores that these guys achieved on the cognitive test. So on a test of pure cognitive ability compared to an American norm group, so basically compared to a world standard, these guys scored in the top 3% in the world. So they're in the top 3% of intelligence compared to anybody else in the world, and they're sitting not contributing definitely as much as they could be contributing to South Africa at a time when our country is desperately short of skills. And so it's just a crazy waste of ability. So what's happening now is that they've come into our system. So they're Awethu entrepreneurs. They are in our incubator. We've developed business ideas with them. So Chris is running straight to your door, the first ever door-to-door delivery service in Alexandra. Ayanda is running U-Control. It's an online sales platform for computers. And Mark is running Joe Burrito, the first Mexican fast food business in Johannesburg. They have free physical infrastructure, so office space, telephones, computers, everything like that. We have an investment fund to invest in their businesses. We have a fellowship where people come from abroad, only advertise at the top business schools and law and consulting companies. And these people come for 6 months to work one-on-one with our entrepreneurs. And we also have corporate partnerships with a lot of the best corporates in Joburg who assist our entrepreneurs as well. So really we wanted, like I said, world-class resources invested in these guys. And we've been so encouraged by how well they've done. I mean, I went to my Harvard reunion about 2 months ago, and I can honestly tell you there's no reason to think that these 3 guys should be any less productive or any less impactful on our economy than what my classmates from Harvard are going to be in America. I honestly believe that. And so we've gone out and we've done a second round of testing, KwaThema, Tembisa and Soweto. And the results have been just as extraordinary. In fact, for the first time out of 1,500 people, we got our first perfect score on the cognitive test. A guy, top 1% in the world, and he's running a single taxi in Duduza. He owns a taxi and someone drives it for him, and that's what he's doing. Another guy heard about Awethu in Rustenburg, 2 hours away, and relocated his entire life just because he cared about this opportunity so much. He wanted it so badly, and he's now in the top 2 out of 500 people. And he's probably going to become one of our Awethu entrepreneurs. He's extraordinary as well. So the results are amazing. And what we want to do, we've got some funding now. We got funding from Discovery, a local company, and we're going to identify 15 Awethu entrepreneurs in the next 2 years and really prove that this model can work. Prove it on a small scale, and then our goal is to roll it out. Because I think anywhere in South Africa where this demographic exists, where you've got thousands of people who've been failed by the system, this talent will be there, and we can identify, train, and invest in people like these. We wanted to quantify what we meant when we said we want our entrepreneurs to be world class, and we didn't want to just have that out there as an idea. So we said, okay, graduates of Harvard Business School, according to a study in April, make the most money of any business school in the world. They make on average about 20 million rand in a 20-year career. We want our entrepreneurs to make the same amount of money in the same amount of time, and therefore justify their claims to being world class. That's our goal. So why are we doing this? And this is very, I think, South Africa specific, or maybe a little bit South Africa specific. So number one, why are we doing this? Because this is home. There's no place that I feel like I understand as well as I understand South Africa. There's no place I feel good like I feel in South Africa. This is where my family is. So, and that's incredibly important. Number two is because of a sense of responsibility. I think that a lot of the opportunities I've had have been as a result of the fact that I come from South Africa, and I've had a very specific and unique experience that's a very South African experience. And I wouldn't have had the opportunities I've had if it wasn't for this country. So for me to then take all those opportunities and use them for myself wouldn't have been right. And the third reason is that I just think the best opportunities are here. There's the best opportunity to make a social impact, and there's the best opportunity to make money as a businessman. This place is happening. Africa is happening. It's the next frontier market. The world's investors are seeing it. I see it every day. People have said to us, why would you come back here? Africa is a backwater. You could have been in New York. And I think that's absolute nonsense. I don't think this is a backwater at all. And to answer that, I've never heard a better answer to that idea than what Chris Pinner, one of our entrepreneurs, said during the selection process. So I'll let him say it.
People say where I come from, we come from a disadvantaged background, and then the entrepreneur in me actually would like to disagree. The reason for that is that I believe that I come from a previously unexplored market, not a previously disadvantaged background.
So what Chris says, I think, is exactly right, and it's actually borne out by the facts. McKinsey a couple of months ago came out with a quarterly report on Africa, and it was the most positive report I've ever seen about the continent's economic prospects. It was glowing, and what they said was that return on foreign investment in Africa is higher than in any other developing region. Despite all the stigma, despite all the negative ideas about Africa, despite all the problems we've had, return on investment here has been higher than any other developing region. It's a fact that can't be argued with, just the same as our cognitive scores can't be argued with. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about South Africa. I'm excited about Awethu. And the thing that I love most about it is that it's young South Africans And then young people, you know, we've got foreign fellows who come and help us, but we're making things happen, and we're going to, I don't know if Awethu will work, but I think it will. But more importantly, we are developing ideas and we're developing solutions for ourselves. And I love it.